So good morning or good midday, everybody. It's an honor to be here speaking to the people who are really building the future and about a topic I'm really passionate about. So let me start with a personal story. This happened about 1.5 years ago. I became the father of twins. Unfortunately, due to a medical circumstance, the babies were born extremely premature. They both weighed 750 grams, so small you could hold each on the palm of your hand. And how is this related to AI? I can imagine now people asking. I made a very strange friend during those 3 months that I spent in the neonatal, so newborn intensive care unit. And there was a researcher and a doctor who was looking at IBM's Watson to create an algorithm that would help the doctors catch the worst killer of premature babies, so blood poisoning, sepsis, from all the data that they generate out of the hospital machinery. And you can imagine the ICU for newborns. It's a noisy place, it's a busy place. The doctors are running around, the nurses are trying to keep the babies alive. And as an environment, it doesn't really leave this room for analysis and deep thought. And what struck me was that the doctor said, hey, if we could have somebody who's calm and collected all the time, i.e. Watson, look at all that data and try to just give me constant inputs, feed my sort of own intuition about the status of these kids, I'm 100% sure I'd be 3 times the doctor I am. And that was the first time I really realized that by building human and machine partnerships, we can both make better machines and better humans. And that's how I became passionate about this topic. Now, I would love to make this a very happy story, but as life goes, there's good and bad in it. The other one of the twins passed away, but over there on the top left, that's Martti, now about 1.5 years old and being a very happy boy, so maybe Watson did some good. And yeah, to tell a bit about myself, that's my older daughter, Laura, and she's the one reason what also inspires me to think how we build better futures, not just for ourselves, but for the generations to come. Because we all know that there's big questions that we really haven't solved as humanity yet. We haven't even started. And about myself, when I'm not working on growing and building Solita, the largest AI company in the Nordics, we're about 700 people. My big passion is road cycling, and every summer me and a team of cyclists ride to Paris from Helsinki to raise money for kids with cancer. And for me, that's a good reminder of what separates us humans from machines, because we do crazy stuff like that. And that's what gives us our élan vital, makes us happy, makes us feel that life is worth living. And I think that's really the one thing where I hope machines can help us be better at as well. How do machines enable better lives for all of us? And at Solita, that's at the core of our company mission as well. How do we create this new future where humans and machines work together? So if you're interested in that, make sure to get in touch. Now, I'd like to start really far back in history when it comes to humans and artificial beings. How many are familiar with the legend of the Golem? Excellent, very civilized audience, I love that. And typically, the sort of Jewish myth of golems is that a magician creates a golem to fulfill a certain task with algorithmic precision, then the golem sets about doing it. And for example, the origin story of the desert on the Sinai Peninsula comes from the fact that the golem stepped on the magician and just kept shoveling the sand until it built a desert. But why golems are relevant, I think, is that we've always been afraid of the technologies we create, of the forces that we unleash on the world, because we don't really understand them. And I think with all the scaremongering about AI, and on the other hand, all those over-optimistic scenarios, I think we need to start having this conversation of what kind of golems we are unleashing on the world. And I think the role of programmers is so crucial in this. You people the creators of new digital services, are you business leaders or developers, architects, data scientists, I implore you to watch the talk by Robert Martin, who speaks about the role of programmers in the future. And what strikes me about his talk is the quote, "Civilization depends on us. Civilization just doesn't understand that yet." And he finishes it by saying, "And we don't understand it yet." Us as the creators of technology, to be honest, we do not understand the impact that technologies that we create are having on this world. In my talk, I will try to give a few angles to this and try to give you maybe some thoughts to think about next time you embark on a new project or you look at creating another habit-forming loop for your startup. Technology is, by nature, very neutral, at least in my opinion. We could debate that for hours. But I think the hardest part about technology is that as humans, we apply technology. And we all know that humans, within all of us, is a great capacity for good and a great capacity for evil. Do you know what this is? I see people nodding. Yes, it's a Predator drone. And I think it's a great example because this technology can be used to fly over a disaster area after an earthquake or a flood or whatever catastrophe, find lives to be saved. Or it can be remotely piloted from a base in Arkansas and used to fire missiles at suspected terrorists in a village in Afghanistan. Is it good or evil? And of course, although I try to avoid science fiction in this talk, I put in this little bit because we all know technology is also advancing. So while we're maybe debating the Predator drones, we are getting to the point where your insurance company could send this small drone over to Katis, our director of recruiting there in front, to her bedroom, pick up a bit of your DNA, and figure out whether to give you the life insurance or not. Or maybe the same drone we could use to send to villages in Africa to inoculate people against malaria and eliminate that scourge and help them build better lives and lift themselves out of poverty. Again, technology enables both good and evil. And again, even personally for me, one of the biggest mindfucks, if you will, is the fact that the same technology that enabled us to explode nuclear bombs over Hiroshima and Nagasaki saved my life when I had cancer when I was 23. Now, technology is both applicable to good and to evil. Now, why it's important to speak about good and evil when you're just creating neutral technology is that, of course, also as developers and as creators of technology, we are also very much responsible on how it's applied and what we create it for. There's a very interesting bit of research from the professor of business ethics at the University of Notre Dame, Anne ten Brunsel. And basically, the experiment she did with students was very simple. She took a problem, and then for half of the students, she framed, "This is a business problem, come up with a solution." And for the others, she said, "This is an ethics question, solve this." And you can imagine those two groups having completely binary opposite responses to it, because of course as a business problem, you don't have to care about human lives, you don't have to care about the big impact of what you're doing. Whereas if you frame it as an ethics problem, suddenly you start thinking about things quite a lot differently. And now, there hasn't been research done on this, but I'd hazard a guess that sometimes we approach a thing by thinking, hey, it's a technical problem, and you just think about the technical solution, and you don't even frame it to yourself as a potentially ethical problem. So this, for me, is why this topic is so extremely important. I mean, and there is a lot of technology where our opinions on how it should be applied is also not black and white. As human morals go, there is no right and wrong to many questions. SenseTime is now the world's most valuable AI startup. You've probably all seen some demos of SenseTime running in Chinese cities where you have real-time active surveillance of populations of tens of millions. Now, the CEO of SenseTime says, there are no privacy issues because only authorized people get to see the data. Aha, nice, there are no privacy issues. I think some people in this room might disagree with him. But some people probably even agree, because maybe this technology we should use to catch terrorists before they kill people, or maybe we could use this technology to make sure that our loved ones are safe all the time. Wow. But of course, who should we trust when it comes to ethics of technology? There's a good question in the beginning about self-driving cars. Do we trust corporations to do it? Or should we trust governments to do it? And well, China is quite far along with their program of total data control. And I think especially the fact that they really conceived of this Black Mirror-esque social credit score system, where all your interactions with your friends, whether you buy Chinese or foreign products, whether you write subversive things on the internet, all affect your social credit score, and not only yours, but also of your family and your friends. And well, the social credit score tends to have an impact on quite a lot of stuff. So the recent article from Fortune magazine, China starting to block travel from people with bad social credit scores. And you probably also don't want to hang around with people with bad social credit scores, because that will also lower your score. So suddenly, we are creating systems which, maybe in the Western democracies, we use to target advertising better, but very similar technologies can also be used to create states of total control. So for me, the big threat, or the big question, doesn't come from killer robots, although autonomous weapon systems is also a very intriguing topic, but let's not go there today. But more precisely, we don't see the threats. They will not be lumbering towards us like the exoskeleton of a T-800, but rather, to quote Hannah Arendt, the sad truth is that most evil is done by people who never make up their minds to be good or evil. The banality of evil sometimes is just really absurd. Yesterday, when I was walking to my hotel from the conference, I stopped at a church in the city center, and they had an exhibition about the mass deportations of Vienna's Jews. And they showed the archiving systems that they used to tag people and to make sure that all the databases were correct, so that they were very efficient in getting the people out of the city. And now if you think that in, 75 years, we've changed that much as people, I'd say you are wrong. It's much more a question of what we do as people, not what we are as people, that makes the difference. So that, for me, is the big question of what kind of partnerships do we need to build between humans and machines? Now, one of my childhood heroes is a professional chess player, Garry Kasparov, who, in addition to probably being the most single brilliant human to play chess, also had the unfortunate distinction of being the first human grandmaster and world champion to be spanked by a machine intelligence. It was in 1997 when Deep Blue beat Kasparov, and I still remember being a 16-year-old chess geek and just angrily tossing my pieces into the corner and saying, like, okay, no point in playing anymore. And yeah, so I switched to playing Go, the Japanese board game. But Kasparov, he didn't quit playing chess either. And what really inspired me was when I started reading up on what he did after the games with Deep Blue. And he became a champion of advanced chess, or centaur chess, where humans and AIs play together against other humans and AIs, or against other AIs. And what's really intriguing is that up to this day, no AI playing against a human and AI team has been able to beat the human and AI together. And it's not only chess. My father, he's a retired pathologist now, so he spent most of his professional career looking at slides like this, trying to figure out somewhere over there some cancerous cells which might kill the person. And at this point, of course, you can imagine image recognition technology being about 10 times as effective as a regular pathologist in figuring out if a certain sample has cancer or not. But what's interesting is, and what's now happening in a very small niche of health startups, in pathology, in trying to improve the workflows, is that systems which combine both image recognition, AI, and then a professional pathologist are 3 times more likely than the computer alone in discovering both rare forms of cancer or discovering cancer which had spread or behaved differently, leading to much better outcomes for the patients. Humans and AIs working together instead of seeing us as opposites. This is the thing that really drives me in terms of what kind of a future should we create. And to be fair, commenting on the self-driving cars, there are also a lot of tasks where human intervention is very much not desired, because as humans, I think the main difference comes from, how many of have you read Kahneman's Thinking Fast and Slow? Good, I highly recommend it. Do read it. I think that book actually, in many ways, tells about what us humans are good at compared to what AIs are good at. And for me, I'm much better at being intuitive, sort of trying to figure out what we should do next based on very limited information, and being able to understand, kind of like in advanced chess, where the human player comes up with crazy strategies which the computers can't calculate or don't figure out because they're not crazy. So I think we should embrace our human craziness when it comes to what us humans do well. But for example, with self-driving cars, since I know at least one person who has had the unfortunate experience of being a passenger in a car which I was driving, humans should never be allowed behind the wheel because they drive too fast, they take stupid risks. And that's why human and AI partnerships should there be focused on limiting us humans from doing our stupid stuff. Now, but when it comes to human and AI partnerships, the ethics of good and evil, I think, is again at its core. So the professor at the University of Indiana, Colin Allen, he's a professor of cognitive science, and his point is that we should not try to replicate human morality in machines, but rather, at least, make the machines sensitive to ethically important things. And now I think this is one of the core things that we have to start looking at. Nobody knows yet how this should be done. But if we start looking at the cases of algorithmic bias, where we outsource human things to machines which we should not outsource to machines, like having an algorithm decide whether or not you get health care. We've got much too many cases of this now, since insurance companies realize that, hey, by mining from big data, we can deny coverage from those who are not profitable, leading to cases, for example, where one insurance company systematically denied health insurance coverage from 30-something women who were highly educated and did not have kids, because the algorithm knew that they probably will be a big risk soon because they will have kids, and we'd better not give them coverage. Now, which raises quite a lot of important questions on if this is right or wrong. It is not right. And of course, what kind of societies we want to be building if we just run these algorithms on optimizing, for example, the return per customer. And of course, we've had a lot of talk about diversity in the past 2 days over here as well. And we've tried to look at AI, for example, as a way of cutting down on biased hiring decisions. But what seems to happen is that if we just let the AIs decide, we transfer our human biases either actively, but sometimes passively to them. For example, well, cases of active bias, you can imagine, you just grade people different based on their universities, or on their gender, or on the race that they get assigned. But I think the much harder part are the implicit biases that algorithms start picking up on. For example, a hiring algorithm for a fast food chain in the US suddenly disproportionately started denying people of color from interviews. So they started digging in. What happened? Because we don't look at race as a criteria. The algorithm doesn't even see the race. It doesn't even see the name of the applicant. But it turned out that one of the key factors, whether an employee was a profitable hire, ergo it would stay, she or he would stay long enough to be worth the training and all the investment that goes into a new employee, is very much determined by the distance to work by public transport. And because in the US, public transport doesn't run well in unprivileged areas where a lot of the people of color who'd like to work in the fast food industry come from, their travel times were so long that the algorithm ditched them from contention. That was not explicit bias, but it became very real bias against people who were already underprivileged. And I think these types of questions we should always be actively thinking when we are creating these services. And of course, one area where us humans are constantly faced with questions of good and evil, the application of law, because we all as societies agree on certain codes of conduct which are either lawful or unlawful. And even there, we are still trying to apply stupid, if you will, stupid algorithms to decide, for example, whether to grant parole or whether or how high a bail should be set for an offender, using, well, all kinds of historic data which probably comes from courtrooms where we know juries are biased. So again, a case of very real implicit bias. You can find millions of cases of this stuff online, and luckily we finally started researching into the problem. But what makes me curious is the fact that we are not that far along with the solution yet. Now, I'm a slightly patriotic EU person. I love EU. It's the best invention. I mean, it made my life so much better. You can imagine growing up in rural Finland and then suddenly having the opportunity to travel without having to flash my passport everywhere, getting sponsored by Erasmus to go and study in different cities in Europe, and suddenly feeling not just Finnish, but actually European. So I'm actually one of the few people who's a huge fan of GDPR. And I can see some people smirking and shaking their heads now. But I think as individuals, as people in Europe, GDPR is great because it's finally making it explicit that we need to discuss not just our personal data, but the applications of that personal data. So for example, a much debated and probably very unclear quote, which I won't be reading aloud, is the first step in towards granting us the right to explanation on decisions made by algorithms. Now everybody who knows how neural networks work and all that probably are going like, yeah, that's going to be really fun to implement. But if we don't understand the ethical decisions machines make, what kind of ethics can we design for machines? So that's why I'm really happy EU is, at least from governmental perspective, pushing us towards that. And I think one of the frameworks that we use a lot at Solita to try and gauge the impact of what we're doing is basically trying to think in enough layers of what we are impacting. So first, of course, it's a question to us. Did we learn something while we're doing a new project for a client or creating a new solution? And did we have fun doing it? Because that's usually a very important human metric when it comes to, and fun doesn't need to be always just laughs. Also solving challenging problems is, at least for me, a lot of fun. But then, of course, thinking about the end user. Did we change the behavior of the end users of the system? And of course, does the end user, does she really have a better experience in her life thanks to what we did? So for example, if we digitalize a government solution, would we either save their tax money, would we give them more time to play with their family and friends, or maybe make filling your tax returns at least not as horrible as it used to be? But then I think the top level is always important. We should, and I think all of us should, ask, how are we changing society with the things we're doing? And are people's lives better as a result? Because I think a lot of the nasty stories that we've now heard about Silicon Valley, I mean, we all used to be Silicon Valley fanboys and fangirls, I think. We used to think like, wow, that's so creative, and disruption, move fast and break things, that's great. Until we broke the political system in the US, had Brexit, had Uber not only disrupt taxi services, but actually create disgusting workplace cultures, and Airbnb turning places like Barcelona and Amsterdam into slightly unlivable places, to be honest, because nobody thought about the impact of what happens once you open one more layer and actually change society in terms of housing. And then suddenly everybody's going, no, it's just a platform. We don't have to care. Nothing is just a platform. It's all ethical choices. I mean, and this used to be a joke that I do at presentations, going like, hey, and then you've got a company which is putting, what, about 4 billion market value right now into trying to make sure that people do not end up in lasting monogamous happy relationships because their user base dwindles whenever somebody actually gets a match or like gets a lasting match. Of course, you get matches so you stay addicted. But since I'm moving in with my Tinder success story, hashtag, let's see if actually I was wrong about this part. Let's see. But the systems that we are generating are changing society in ways that we don't yet understand. And I think the one kind of framework that I'd like to leave for you, in addition to thinking about the impact of what you're doing, is the question, what behavior change does your business need to promote to be successful? This is from our business designer, Johannes Hirvonsalo, who's now advocating that we are moving away from service design to behavior design. And I think his point is good. I mean, there's not much you can do service design-wise to improve an app like Foodora or the experience when I go to my CrossFit box in terms of how the gym, how that service is designed. But both have very interesting questions about larger scale behavior. How do you promote people's willingness to order restaurant food as home delivery? That's very different than just designing a very cool app. Or how do you get a busy middle-aged balding man to actually get off his ass, get out of that couch and actually go out to the CrossFit box instead of just paying the gym fee to feel happy about doing something, which I think a lot of people with gym memberships as well do. And I think Marshall McLuhan, this gentleman, he died in 1980, but he said, I think very presciently, that we shape our tools, but thereafter our tools shape us. And if we think of ourselves as humanity, the way cars have changed us, the way mobile phones have changed us, that kind of impact is just massive. And the tools we are creating right now and unleashing on the world, we don't even know how they will change us. But we all know our behavior has changed in so many ways, even in the last decade. If we think about how we share things on social media, how we stop sharing things, or how we trust other people now to travel to their homes on the other side of the world without even blinking and sleeping at their Airbnb. We've changed as humans in very, very many ways. And it's not been bad. I think it's mainly good, but we should always understand the impact our tools have on us. And to be fair, Marshall McLuhan, he was also very prescient. He predicted Google having a system where you can search all the world's knowledge. He predicted Facebook, a system which will connect all the people on the planet, and these all before his death in 1980. So very interesting guy. I recommend reading up on his stuff. Don't use his reading method, though. He reads a book by reading every other page, because then he had to fill in what was missing from the other page and made him think more. I don't know. I love crazy people. And I think part of the challenge for us is that these are the types of books we tend to read. I love Hooked. It's an excellent book. But holy shit, it's also terrible. I mean, it's basically teaching us to turn anything into a habit. Getting people addicted to whatever the thing that your startup wants to achieve is. And we all know it in ourselves when we see those red dots in the notification bar. We go, hey, something nice is happening. We get that nice burst of dopamine in our brains and become one bit more addicted to be it Facebook or Instagram or whichever service of choice. And so I think we've reached the point where we're able to engineer behavior, but now we have to ask the question, what behaviors are worth engineering for? And I think when it comes to service design especially, one of our main problems is that we tend to focus on just one thing, the one product that we're trying to shape. For example, I was spending a day with the management team of a Finnish hotel chain, and they were very keen to improve the experience at the reception when a guest comes in. Although they should have probably, as a management team, been focused on Airbnb and on how do they keep their share of bookings which don't go to the aggregators like Booking.coms and others. But we tend to focus on the thing that we understand, not on the complexity of the systems that we're generating. So that's why Facebook was surprised when, whoa, was Cambridge Analytica actually able to steal all our stuff and create massive programs of voter suppression to prevent minorities from going to vote? Whoa, it wasn't our fault, we're just a platform. But you're not just a platform. Now, I think when it comes to behavior change, one example project that we worked on was a predictive model for type 2 diabetes, which is a massive burden both on the patient but also on our healthcare systems. Now, using just the data from one healthcare provider's system, we were able to create a pretty reliable predictive model that allows us to quite reliably say that, hey, within 5 years, you will end up with type 2 diabetes unless you change your habits. So we were very happy with this great new engine that we built, and it was given to the nurses, and they were given call lists. Call these people in and tell them this news. And yeah, the feedback we got was mortifying. Like, everybody who was told that you have a highly elevated risk said, I know. Yes, they know. We all know that we've got terrible habits. We've got stuff that will kill us if we persist doing it, or at least many of us do. So it's not just a question of were we able to create an engine that displays that risk, but much more the question of how do we engineer smart behavior for the stressed out workers who knew that they had the risk but didn't want to give up on the beer after work or on the greasy food. And I think these types of questions, it really comes to that human-AI partnership. Can we create systems where we create the feedback loops that we are so adept at creating right now for marketing or getting us hooked to notifications or whatever systems, to actually start encouraging healthier and better behavior in our peers, in ourselves, or in the people who really need help? Because, to be honest, it's not rocket science. We've all looked at behavior feedback loops before, and this is what we now build with many of our clients. There's so much data that we can use to create an intelligent profile of every individual, and then use that at every customer touch point to suggest a nice next best action. I mean, we all see it when we shop at Amazon. Would you like to buy this product? Or we see it increasingly in our customer service interactions, where as a valued customer, you might get some nice extra to make sure that it builds your customer loyalty. And of course, then using that data feedback to hone our recommendations as well. One of our clients is the challenger telco DNA in Finland, and I like to go and chat with their customer service people in their physical store. And there was one guy who told me, yeah, this system asked me to sell a tablet with children's television programs to this guy. And well, yeah, then I made up a story. Hey, summer holidays are coming, so you might want to buy this tablet. And the guy was, I have no kids. Now the customer service person, I thought, okay, I started recommending that you might still want the tablet. You can get sports channels, Wimbledon is coming, maybe watch tennis And then the guy goes, yeah, I started dating a few months ago though, and my girlfriend has kids, so I'll take 2 of those tablets for the. Now I don't know if we knew or if we just got lucky, but that types of stories, I mean, they create good customer experiences, but they do raise interesting questions about ethics. I'll just skip this, but basically relevance becoming the key thing in marketing, not only in terms of us pushing things, but also in terms of understanding when and how we should approach people again, to create better behavior. This is from a Harvard Business Review article. I recommend reading it. So anyway, what I hope we all start doing when we create these new systems where we try to use AI to promote better behavior and better humanity is that in addition to business goals, we need to frame these things also as either ethical problems or as behavior problems. Start to look at the bigger picture. So for example, for health, we should start measuring ways of determining increased sense of well-being, for example, heart rate variability, and then use that as a way to show people that, hey, you are improving. You don't have to start going to the gym immediately, but you're already cutting down on your diabetes 2 risk. And I think one challenge for all of us is to build truly multidisciplinary teams. So not just engineers in a room, not just engineers and designers in a room, but engineers, designers, and philosophers, or engineers, designers, philosophers, and ethnographists, or whatever you think that you need to really have an in-depth understanding of the problem. I think a lot of the systems that we create are right now built by people who think that they know, but we don't really know. And then, of course, once you discover the links between the behavior change, the new habits that you create for people, that's where I think you will find very intriguing business models. So I really think this is also a huge business opportunity, and we see it happening with our clients now, moving from just product business to, for example, service business. Now, I think one main driver for this, where AI really helps us, is that we live in increasingly complex times. So in 2008, back when service design was a big hype, we used to think of customer paths. But now we all admit that as chaotic as our own behavior is, so is our customers' behavior as well. And by using AI systems to create those smart profiles, we finally start making sense of the chaos and of the systems that they impact. Now, one book I want to recommend is Macroscope by Joël de Rosnay from 1979. It's available for free online since it's out of print. But basically what he posits is that we build a telescope to understand the infinitely great, and we built the microscope to understand the infinitely small, but we need a macroscope to understand the infinitely complex, and AI is finally giving us humans that power. So maybe at this point we're able to create golems which not only do the tasks we ask them to do, but interact meaningfully with us and understand the meaning of the tasks that we ask the golems to perform. So when we're building these AI systems, it's up to us to start understanding the moral ramifications. And I think the core question is, what kind of a future do you want to be part of making? That's something I ask myself every morning when I go to work and when we look at new client cases. And of course, for me, the big motivation is creating a world, to quote David Mitchell, where a world which I don't fear my children will grow up in, but a world I hope my children will get to grow up in. And we all know that machines will take away many of the jobs that we're used to doing. And it's Elbert Hubbard, a science fiction author from 100 years ago, who said, "A machine can do the job of 50 ordinary men or women, but no machine can do the job of one extraordinary man or woman." So let's help each other be extraordinary. Let's figure out the things where we can use machines to increase and augment our humanity and be better people. Thank you for listening. Let's build a good future.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you, Lassi. That's both interesting and really inspiring. There were a lot of questions. I hope you've got time to talk with people afterwards.
Yes.
Let's agree that the questions we don't get to, Lassi can be standing outside the main door in a few minutes to, and he's happy to be bothered, I believe.
Yes, I am. Yes.
Right.
Thanks for listening, everybody.
So are you on Elon Musk's side? Should AI be regulated because it could be dangerous?
I think we need to figure out, the first question is, what do we mean by AI? I think Elon Musk is more afraid of an artificial general intellect. And I think at this point where we create machine learning algorithms, yes, we should regulate how they're applied, but not regulate them per se. So the applications should be regulated.
Okay, and they're still, in your view, very fancy specialist systems rather than what you call a general
yes.
yeah.
And I think we might not ever get to a human-like general artificial intelligence, because we shouldn't. I mean, machine intelligence is completely different.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, so that kind of obviates the next question. For a technology to be for good, is it enough to make it accessible to everyone equally?
Well, I think if you create a killer robot which is accessible to everybody equally, that probably doesn't still make it good. But I think one moral prerequisite, yes, should be that access to technology be for a diverse population.
And what is your view on enhancing human cognition with technology, for example, with implants?
I think it's a very fascinating field. I've had a friend who implanted a chip in his arm to be able to open doors, and at some point, when the chip was lost inside his body, I think it just shows that when it comes to wetware, we still have quite some ways to go. But to be honest, I think it's a fascinating prospect, because we're finally starting to understand that we're able to control our brains with technology. So already brainwave modulators, things like that. And I really think that we could have both exciting medical applications and maybe even cognitively enhancing applications.
All right. Thank you so much. Thanks again.
Hey, thank you so much. Thank you.